Behind every iconic boss in Elden Ring is a boss arena of variable quality. Some are great, and some have less soul than my dentist's waiting room. So today, we will be reviewing every boss arena in the game, and ranking them on a scale from 1 to 10, excluding the field bosses. Hello everyone! I'm Lost. Keep in mind, while the quality of a boss fight isn't relevant to this video, the boss certainly is. Questions like, is the boss appropriate for the arena? Does the arena impact the fight somehow? And does my dad love me? Are all important questions when it comes to the final score for a boss arena. Mostly, it will come down to how I feel about something. So remember, this is just my opinion, but my opinion is objective truth, and if you disagree, then you can go This area is important. I just don't quite understand why. It's well designed. As you walk in, your gaze is pulled upwards towards the Statue of America, facilitating the entrance of a very unfortunate rendition of Spider-Man. But the lack of an immediate discernible purpose for this place holds it back. I don't know why I'm here or where I come from. 6 out of 10. I don't like this. The Cave of Knowledge is more disappointing to me than I am to my parents. The worst tutorial area in any Souls game by far. The boss room is just a big area with some random soldier in it. 1 out of 10. Every catacomb, ruin, Everjail, and Hero's Grave is overwhelmingly okay. There are some tiny differences between them, but not nearly enough to make any sort of impact. They are all 5.5 out of 10. The tunnels have about as much personality as a white guy named Braden. There isn't much to say. There's some nice lighting and the bosses generally make sense. However, I do find them less cool than the other generic boss rooms. That's why the Limgrave, Morn, Liurnia, Gale, Celia, and Altus tunnels each get a 4 out of 10. Except for the old Altus tunnel, because that has explosives. And that makes it a 4.5 out of 10. While I can easily dismiss the aforementioned dungeons as being samey, the same cannot be said about the caves, as each boss room is different enough to get a separate entry in this video. That doesn't mean that they're good though. But I will give Groveside Cave this. There is a story here. The wolves, seemingly under the leadership of a beastman, have been killing the soldiers that set up camp here, and they have been nibbling on their flesh. This is reflected in the actual boss room, even if it's a bit generic in the end. I will give it a 5 out of 10 though, which may sound a tad generous, but since this is basically the first real cave of the game, I will be lenient. Another basic cave, only saved by the fact that it allows patches to make a neat entrance. 5 out of 10. The way the light hits the golem as you walk through the boss fog is dramatic. I also really like the pillars and ruined structures in the arena. It radiates with a very Lost Civilization energy. I really feel like this place is underrated. 6.7 out of 10. This boss room has a few neat things going for it. It's not the standard semi-round shape that most of these caves arenas come in. There are multiple enemies down here, giving me the sense that they actually live in this cave, and when you beat the boss, the enemies become afraid of you. That's cool. 6 out of 10. The best way to describe Margit's boss arena would be appropriate. Margit stands as your first real test as you vie for your first Great Rune, so it's fitting that the fight takes place at the entrance of your first Legacy dungeon. I also really like that while not exactly narrow, there is a distinct possibility that Margit might just yeet you off the cliffside. This is Elden Ring saying, the training wheels are off. Time to get good. 8 out of 10. Godric the Grafted is found surrounded by graves and kneeling in front of a dead dragon. Golden flowers are dotting the dilapidated pathway to the throne room. Not only is this place visually beautiful, but it also speaks to the character of the boss that you are fighting. The set dressing also plays a role during the actual boss fight, since it is possible to get stuck in some of the graves during a moment of panic. Not that I ever panic, of course. No. I give this place a 9 out of 10. This is just another generic cave. Except this thing. Why is it here? What does it do? I have no idea. This is a boring place, 2.5 out of 10. Hear me out on this one. I will give this arena an 8 out of 10 because it feels so right. The boss room is so perfectly sized and the Miranda flower works so well aesthetically in this room. It's like putting on a perfectly sized glove. It's such a simple, striking image. A small island graveyard, anchored by this humongous tombstone in the center of it. This place is also littered with corpses, telling the grim story of what happened at Castle Morn. This place is great, and I would argue a much better arena than the actual fight. The entrance is perhaps a little goofy once you realize, is it really necessary to have this giant gate here? Still, this is a 10 out of 10. The name fits. We got gross, goopy, stinky water everywhere. I do appreciate that they made an effort showing that people tried to make this place traversable by placing planks in certain areas. The boss being a clean rot knight is also very fitting. 6 out of 10. Depending on the situation, crystals can be really cool or incredibly cringe. Crystal Cave Boss Room? Now that's cool. Your aunt bringing healing crystals to your chemotherapy session? Cringe. 6.5 out of 10. This isn't just a boss room. It's an entrance into Rea Lucaria. Granted, it leads into a completely isolated part of the Legacy Dungeon, but you don't know that when you're fighting the boss. That facade right there made me really hype for what was coming next, and even if it was a tad disappointing, we still end up at a 7 out of 10. A debate parlor is a pretty cool setting for a boss fight, even if I don't think it really fits with the actual fight we get. Radagon's doggo is a cool boss, for sure, but I don't see it do much debating. The arena itself doesn't contribute much to the boss fight other than it being a tight space. But hey, it has some cool paintings to look at once you're done kicking Radagon's dog in the jaw. I think a better choice of boss for this area would be Moongrum. Inject him with some boss juice, make him grow into a big boy, and copy-paste some of the moves from different bosses. I even think that the doggo would be perfect in front of the Renala elevator. As it stands, 6 out of 10. There is just something incredibly cool about libraries, and if you disagree, then you cannot be my friend. There are piles of books on the floor, a statue of Radagon in the back, and cribs hanging from the ceiling. This is also one of the few boss arenas that really plays a big part in the fight, given that you need to look around for the chanting child that you need to murder. 9.5 out of 10. The follow-up to the library is perfect. I have no idea what kind of moon dimension that you are drawn into for Renala's second phase, but who cares? This place is incredible. The Moon Arena is the first of quite a few big room arenas, where the area's only purpose is to give the player a large flat arena to battle it out in. Its effectiveness relies solely on how dramatic it can make the fight, and this is where the environmental artists get to shine. 10 out of 10. You have a bunch of ornate chairs placed around a perfectly circular pool of shallow water. If you don't find that at least a tiny bit intriguing, there might be something wrong with your prefrontal cortex, because this is a solid 7 out of 10. That right there is a chilling silhouette of a magic moose. Pretty cool. Just like Renala's Moon Room, this is another big room arena. It's fairly basic, but the addition of fog really adds to the initial impressions that you get when you're entering this place. This one gets an 8 out of 10. This is a big load of nothing. 2 out of 10. Another generic cave, but this one is rot flavored. 3 out of 10. As we established earlier, crystals are cool and there are a solid amount of crystals here. 7 out of 10. Back to the generic stuff, I guess. The boss room in Dragon Barrow Cave is your average looking cave space. I will give it bonus points for having you be dropped into the arena, but that still only gets you as far as 3.3 out of 10. The Nox arena might as well be a ginger, because it has no soul. 3.5 out of 10. A desolate battlefield, littered with the corpses of his soldiers. Radahn's arena is exactly what it needs to be. 10 out of 10. I wish there were more context for the boss fight, but the aqueduct theme we have here is unique, and the centerpiece of the boss room does a good job concealing the boss until he comes crawling around the corner. It's nice. I will give it a 6.9 out of 10. This is a weird one, because the boss room is both too big and too small at the same time. Walking through this door, you would expect a fairly sizable foe, but instead, you are confronted by yourself. Don't get me wrong, the Mimic Tear is a fantastic boss concept, but the arena does nothing to support that. I think it would be much better to fight the Mimic Tear somewhere more intimate. That could mean a smaller space, or something more ethereal. Like in Ocarina of Time when Link had to fight the dark version of himself. I would have loved to see the Mimic Tear in a revised version of Renala's Moon Arena, for example. Aside from the fight, the arena itself, it's solid. But it just feels like it would be more appropriate to battle a Nokron Dragonkin soldier or something similar here. 5 out of 10. This is simply perfection. As you walk through the tunnel leading up to the boss, the arena will gradually unveil itself to you, revealing this huge statue of a robed skeleton sitting on a throne. In front of it, you can see a large amount of smaller stone statues that look equal amounts awestruck and terrified. Finally, as the boss jumps into the arena, it lands with a splash in the shallow river that you have been following. This is my favorite arena in the game, and I have to give it a 10 out of 10. I think this arena is probably the most underappreciated area in Elden Ring. That's mostly due to having to fight 2 asshole gargoyles here. It's hard to appreciate a well-constructed bathroom when 2 bullies are pushing your face down into a toilet. 8 out of 10. Another big room arena, but it got some flair to it. The light playing with the fog gives it a very spacey feel. 7 out of 10. I will admit, when I was first writing the script for this video, I was thinking that this would be the worst arena in the game, as far as major bosses are concerned. You see, in my brain, I just remembered this place as a big room with nothing going on.
Hello there.
But while I was revisiting this place to gather some footage, I think it looks really cool. The walls are super ornate and those big torches give this area an epic feel to it. 8 out of 10. It does try a bit harder than your average cave. Sure, it's one of those circular arenas, but it does have a ring of poison goop around the middle of it, which makes it slightly more memorable. I will give it a 5 out of 10. This place is called Volcano Cave, and yet there is no lava anywhere. I feel like that borders on false advertisement. The boss room is probably the most generic cave in the game as well, so it's a 2 out of 10. I get real storage space vibes from this place. This is where the Inquisitors store their surplus equipment. 4 out of 10. A spooky church, bathed in ominous crimson light. The perfect place to be ambushed by a man in a fat suit. 9 out of 10. I love the different elements that make up this neck cave. Piles of corpses on the ground, ostentatious chandeliers in the ceiling, right next to cages. The perfect arena for the best gimmick boss fight FromSoft has ever made. 10 out of 10. There is nothing about this place I don't like. The red carpet leading up to the Lord's area. To the sides, we have what I assume to be the nobles' tables, still set with plates, ready for a feast that never came. I love how the walls are adorned with paintings and prosthetics, and I love how you will likely destroy most of it in the coming battle with the Briar. 10 out of 10. I think some people might disagree with me giving this place such a high score, but you have to remember to shut your whore. This cave is a 2-for-1 combo. 1 dungeon, 2 boss fights. The first one is against the Necromancer and his pet undead snake. Look at that cutie pie. Unfortunately, we fight him in the most generic cave room. Look, I will mark this down as a disappointment. Huge disappointment, because you could do quite a lot with this area to make it memorable without going overboard with the effort. A little skull here, a little table there, and look at this place. Perfect for a pile of victims. I'm so disappointed. 1.5 out of 10. In the other arena, we fight an invisible Black Knife assassin. This is one of the most annoying fights in the game if you don't have the right equipment. As explained in the intro, the quality of the boss fights shouldn't matter for the boss arena, but here they are intrinsically linked. You are standing in a shallow pool of water and you're supposed to use that to locate the boss. This would have been a much better boss fight if it had had a slower moving enemy. The arena itself is decorated with a few Albinauric corpses, so that's neat. But it's not enough to wash away my bad experience. 3 out of 10. Generic grass-flavored cave. 4 out of 10. The sealed tunnel in Altus is basically the final form of the tunnel arena. Bigger, more important looking, and with a fitting boss. 7 out of 10. There is nothing really wrong with this arena, but at the same time, very few things stand out. I did once accidentally jump off over the railings here, which was kinda funny, but mostly, this is the definition of fine. 5 out of 10. This place isn't all that crazy spectacular, but it does come with the innate sense of importance given that we are right in front of the Erd Tree. The cutscene just before the battle also gives us some added context to what this place was used for. So, I feel like giving this place a 8 out of 10. A small church at the bottom of the sewers. This is a small area that at first glance doesn't seem all that special, aside from the whole traversing the sewers thing. But it does hold a very special secret that gives it an extra boost of prestige, once you know. 7 out of 10. This was another case of my memory failing me. I didn't remember this boss room having a lot of stuff going for it, but if you look around for a moment you will realize that the architecture of the fort makes this area look pretty nice. 6 out of 10. The ethereal light reflected in the water brings this boss room up from being a generic cave number 12, but it's still a 4.5 out of 10. I'm a little torn on this place. On one hand, you are fighting a giant on a mountaintop. It is a suitably epic place. On the other hand, I've more than once been screwed over by the landscape. It's been really annoying. Still, it's a 7 out of 10. Okay, I'm tempted to give this arena a 10 out of 10 just because of this. But unfortunately, the boss room is generally a bit boring, so that brings it down. 8 out of 10. I feel like I'm running out of words to describe just how incredible some of these areas are. We have a slowly crumbling temple that exists outside of time and space. Maybe, something like that. Look, I don't quite know the lore of this place, but anyone who sees a stone pillars floating in the air understands that somewhere along the way, we decided that the laws of physics were more akin to optional guidelines, and that's pretty intriguing. Outside of its stunning visuals, the boss room has these pillars that you can use to put some distance between you and Malekith in the fight itself. I don't know about you, but I used these pillars religiously the first few hundred times I fought him. It's one of those few examples of the boss arena really assisting you in the fight. 10 out of 10. In my opinion, which by the way is the only one that counts, Placidu Sax is the best presented boss in the game. The way he just floats there in the distance, minding his own business until you arrive. The boss room, another big room arena, does well to underscore that. 10 out of 10. I imagine that this place smells terribly, considering the wasting corpse of the fish mutant in the background. Still, it makes for a strong experience. 9 out of 10. Mohg's arena gives off heavy Parthenon vibes. That gives it an air of importance and regality. Quite fitting for a man who wants to start his own dynasty, and let's not forget that the battle is happening in front of what I assume to be a giant meatball with some Miquella stuffing. Strong 9 out of 10. Another cave, but this one is ice flavored. I also find it a bit disappointing that a misbegotten with one of the most important weapons in the game didn't run somewhere more interesting. It's so generic. It's even so generic, but that I didn't actually write down a score for this. So at the top of my head, I'm gonna say 3. 3 out of 10. This is the only big room arena that I don't particularly care for. I think there is a missed opportunity here, showing a group of scholars excavating what they thought was a dormant alien for it to burst out and rip them apart. As it stands, it's just a big room. 3 out of 10. While this place doesn't exactly have much in the way of signifiers to tell us what it was used for, I always imagined that this area was used as a marketplace for the different people who lived in the Haligtree. A place designated for the local farmers market, where the inhabitants happily traded non-toxic fruits and other foodstuffs, until Melania came back and gave everybody space aids. It's a surprisingly big space given the fight with Loretta, and yet I'm not as bothered by that as I have been with other areas in this video. I think it's because she's on a horse, and horses need space to trot around. At least that's how I justify it in my mind. 8 out of 10. We find ourselves at the core of the Haligtree, the inner sanctum, the roots, and unfortunately, we are met by tragedy. White moldy flowers grow from soil infested with scarlet rot. The Haligtree is dead, nothing but a husk, guarded by one of the most accomplished warriors in the lands between, who are slowly losing her mind. This place is as beautiful as it is sad. While maybe not in the forefront of people's minds when we talk about epic boss rooms, Melania's arena has some advantages over many others when you realize that it's a product of Melania herself. The flowers, the rot, and maybe even the dead roots themselves, all caused by the malady that courses through her veins. This was also Miquella's chosen bedroom before he was snatched up by Amazing Chest's favorite character, Mohg. I'm giving this place a 10 out of 10. I have to say, I like this place more when entering from this side. Not by a great deal, but enough to give it a 6 out of 10 this time around. It shows that perspective is important. We already gave this place an 8 out of 10, but now it has extra meaning. We killed Morgoth here, and we are about to fight his dad. That's gotta hit you in the feelings. Of course, his dad did throw Morgoth and his brother into the sewers to hide them. I know we love Horalu, but he's not exactly Dad of the Year material now, is he? He could have taken them with him when he left Marika. He's kind of a douchebag now that I think of it. That's not relevant though, so 9 out of 10. The Erdtree is hollow, empty, and at this point meaningless. So this barren circle with the occasional piles of golden leaf makes sense, even if it's a little boring. 7 out of 10. Not only are you fighting God, you are doing so while they have home field advantage. We are on a lake, in space, surrounded by multiple other Erdtrees, or something like that. This is how you finish a game. This is majestic. 10 out of 10. Remember to subscribe, because I want to be rich and famous.